James and Heidi. Please welcome them to the stage. James and Heidi.
Well, it all started for us in 2001 at the Out and Equal Workplace Summit in Erlanger, Kentucky. Erlanger is the proud home of the Cincinnati International Airport, and I lived in Cincinnati at the time. So I was the national co-chair for this summit, for this conference, and as such, I had spent 2 years just killing myself to make sure that the conference was going to be absolutely amazing. The conference was early in October, which is 3 weeks after 9/11. And about a third of the people who had registered for the conference canceled because, understandably they were afraid to fly. And we ended up with, I think, 275 people at the conference. And I was determined that this was going to be the best conference anyone had ever attended.
Well, I flew in on a red eye from San Francisco. And I was really exhausted. Erlanger, Kentucky? So go to the Erlanger Holiday Inn. The Erlanger Holiday Inn, Cincinnati Airport Holiday Inn, Erlanger, Kentucky. And I got to the hotel and just in time to find out that my workshop session that I was presenting was going to be in the very first group of workshops, which meant I had no time for a nap. I also found out that my workshop was going to be in the absolutely smallest possible room that you could put a workshop in. I thought, okay, so this is what they think of transgender topics. Fine. So I was already angry. And I wandered into the ballroom where people were starting to collect. And in the back of the ballroom, there was this vat of coffee. And I thought, that's where I'm going. And I stayed by that vat of coffee with my back to the podium. And then eventually the conference began, or the session began. And they introduced the national co-chair of the conference, Heidi. And people started cheering and applauding. And I went, oh, great. I didn't even turn around. Oh, great. Heidi. More coffee, please. And then she spoke, and my body filled with phosphorescence. I was like, oh my God, who is that? And I turned and I looked and I thought, she is gorgeous, and listen to her. Just listen to her. People really loved her, and she was articulate, and she was welcoming and warm and funny, and everything was wonderful. And then I realized, looking at her across this crowded room, she must be 6 feet tall. There is no way she's going to be interested in me, and I went back to the coffee. And after a little while, that session ended, and I went and I presented my workshop, and somehow, miraculously, the room was filled with people, top to bottom, and I was awake. And the workshop went fine. It was a wonderful day. The rest of the day, I was full of energy. It was really exciting. The whole conference was great. And then they bussed us. They put us on these buses at the end of the day to go to a dinner cruise on the Ohio River. So
Kind of cool.
I was exhausted, and on the bus, I kind of like lost it. I was going, So I got onto the boat, got into a line for drinks, ended up in a conversation with this very amazing little woman who was just like, come and sit. Yeah, she was about this high. Bundle of energy. And she said, oh, come and have dinner. Come and sit with us. Just come and sit with my friends at our table. And I'm like, she goes, oh, come on. And so I did. And who am I sitting next to? Heidi. I said to myself, this could be interesting.
Well, and actually, I knew who James was too. I'd never met him. For background, James was one of the most famous trans men in the world, actually. He's a world-renowned author, educator, activist, and a leader in that community. But I didn't know anything about that. What I knew was in his conference registration materials, he'd written down that he has a life-threatening peanut allergy. And so as the person who's in charge of everything, all the details, big and small, I had an hour-long conversation with the hotel chef and his staff. And at the end of that, we had a peanut-free menu, and James was affectionately known as Mr. Peanut.
Now,
So when he introduced himself, I thought, oh, it's Mr. Peanut.
to be clear, I hate that. And if I had known that they were calling me that behind my back, it could have been a deal breaker. But as it happened, I had no idea about that until probably a year later.
Right, fortunately.
We had a great time at dinner. 6 people at the table. Everybody was really smart, articulate, funny. It was wonderful. We had such a good time. And then at the end of dinner, people came from all over the place to Heidi to drag her off to the dance floor, which was on a deck below. I, however, had promised my friends who were the live musicians that they'd hired from Atlanta to basically stay and hear their sets. So I had no idea I was going to meet somebody I wanted to dance with. So when Heidi said, "Come dancing with us," I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't. I promised my friends that I would stay and hear their sets." And I thought she'd be impressed with my, integrity and my dedication to my commitment to my friends,
Okay, well, in my defense, now I had a great time at dinner also. I just was so intrigued by him. He's gorgeous, and he is a funny storyteller, and he listens really well, which is important to me. And part of the dinner was just this sharing of who we all were, and I was totally intrigued with him. So then when he turned down my invitation to go dancing, I didn't hear the integrity and the honor and the all I heard was, "I don't want to go dancing with you." And I was crushed. I was so crushed. And I thought, pull up your big girl panties, and it's okay. He's in a relationship, or he's just not interested, and that's okay. I'm just going to go disco.
So I stayed and listened to the musicians. They were great. I was miserable. I wanted to be dancing with Heidi, and probably everybody was dancing with Heidi and having a wonderful time. And I was miserable, and I stayed the entire time they played, and finally it was time to pack up all their equipment. I helped them pack their equipment, coil up their cables. I was the last person off the damn boat. And I got onto the last bus back to the hotel, and Heidi was on the bus.
Ooh. So I saw him get onto the bus, and I said to my friends Paul and Maria, "That's the guy I've been telling you about all night." So he and I, ended up in a little bit of a conversation, but then all the buses got to the hotel, and in the throngs of people going in, we got separated, and people wanted me to go solve crises and things like that. And by the time
I'm easy to lose in a crowd.
It's very short, very short. I look up here, he's not there. But he, so when I got inside, I looked for him, I really did. And I saw him in the bar, but he was surrounded by people who were talking to him and vying for his attention, and I thought, oh, and I got a little insecure. And I said, I'm just gonna go to bed.
Well, I waited for her. I thought for sure she's going to show up in the bar, but I never saw her, so I just turned in too after a while.
But the next day was Saturday, the big day of the summit. But it was really busy, so even though I saw him several times, we didn't get a chance to talk. And I realized toward the end of the day that I really needed to know if he had felt any of the attraction that I had felt the night before. So after dinner, I kind of screwed up my courage, and I went up to him and I said, "So last night at dinner, you told a story about a girlfriend. Do you have a girlfriend now?" Pretty gutsy, right?
And I drew myself up to my most full height and said, "Why, no. I am 100% available. Why do you ask?" So we ran off to a solitary corner of the lobby so we could talk for a few minutes, and it took only about 20 minutes for people to find us who needed Heidi's help for some crisis or another around the conference. So that was about it, and that was about it.
Yeah. Well, so we didn't get to talk anymore that night, but the next day was Sunday, which is the last day of the conference. So we really didn't have time to do anything other than exchange numbers and agree that we'd talk on Tuesday.
So on Tuesday, I was supposed to call her at an appointed hour, and like 15 minutes before the appointed hour,
I couldn't wait.
she called me.
Wait.
I took that as a good sign.
It was.
And we talked for 2 whole hours. And then we did the same thing again on Wednesday evening, 2 whole hours, and 2 hours on Thursday evening, and 2 hours on Friday evening. And we were really, really getting to know each other well, and we were really, really connecting in our conversations, and felt great.
One of the questions he asked me was, or what I asked him actually was, "So how tall are you?"
I said, "I'm not." "How tall are you?"
So I said, "I'm 5'10".
I said, "Oh, you have 6 inches on me."
But then I said, "Well, you know, my favorite aunt married a man 6 inches shorter than her, and they're still married after 40 years, and they're really happy."
I said, "Oh, this runs in your family then." "Great. Okay." If I had known she was calling me Mr. Peanut behind my back,
Thank God he didn't hear my stories. So we didn't talk after Friday because on Saturday, I had made a reservation months and months before to go on an Olivia Cruise Lines vacation. For those who don't know Olivia, it's a women's-only vacation company. And my plan had been, because I'd spent 2 incredibly hard years planning this conference and being celibate the entire time because I didn't need relationship drama to distract me, my plan was to go on this vacation and have at least 1 torrid affair, maybe more. And there I was in this gorgeous tropical place, and I've got like 800 beautiful women around me, sexy women, women wanting to have a torrid affair with me, and all I could think about was a man. This man.
when Heidi came back from her excursion, we decided it was time for us to have, after a few weeks, time for us to have a chemistry test. So we made an arrangement for me to fly out to Cincinnati and spend the weekend at her place. And we made arrangements that I was to sleep in the guest room unless we agreed differently.
Yes. Well, so when Friday night of our chosen weekend came, I drove to the airport to pick James up, and I was nervous. I had actually made an emergency exit plan with my friend Mike. He was going to call Saturday morning with some excuse to get me out of the rest of the weekend if I needed it. But when I saw James at the airport and started talking to him, all his charisma and how easy he was to talk to and be around came back. And I was just entranced again. And as we drove to the restaurant, I looked over at him and I put my hand on his muscular thigh. Yes, it was his thigh. And I thought to myself, oh no, I don't need an emergency exit. He is not sleeping in the guest room.
There we are.